Yeah, it's an interesting time speaking to Roshi because he's been teaching so long that things come up for him every few years, new things. And I think he's thinking in terms of his whole life's work in a certain way, and what will complete that, and what that means, and it brings up interesting things about how you continue a lineage. And those of you that study with me, you are part of a lineage, which is kind of interesting. I was talking to Tawny, where's Tawny? There's Tawny, this week, and she was talking about doing photography, and through, not so much through Genpo Roshi, but through Daido Roshi, we have a lineage that does photography that goes back to Minor White. And that photography, as it emerges, and the art in general that emerges out of this lineage, one generation after another, really does reflect the previous generation. In the Zen lineage, there's also the poetry and drawings of Soen Roshi, Soen Nakagawa, which is Daido's first teacher. But it is very interesting, excuse me, if you look back on this, and you look at the way, say, that I photograph, or the way Karen photographs, and the way Daido photographs, and then the way the Minor White photographs, you see one thought, and go through all that, and you can tap into that thought. And it's different. See, there's a great difference between, and I can only say this through experience, I guess. There's a difference between sitting in a classroom, for example. Let's say I was first a lit major and studying Walt Whitman or Thoreau or Joyce, then actually learning from a living lineage. There's a whole difference. And obviously the difference is the difference between, say, you learning from me and learning from a book on Zen or on the Fourth Way. It's different. And there's an entirely different personal quality, and some of that difference is really in the way that you understand it. Like I feel, especially in art, having gone through this with Daido and where he comes from, that it's like I know how to see creations the way he sees them, and the way Minor White did, and the way Soen did. And I know how to speak in the way that Genpo Roshi did. I listened to him speak for thousands of hours. And I know how to speak the way Maizumi Roshi did. And when that element comes in, and I know how to teach the way that Dave Daniels or Willem Noun did, when that element comes in, you have an emotional aspect that you don't otherwise have. But it also does require on the part of the student that you open to that. Because you can, even when you're dealing with live flowing, it can be very impersonal. You can take it as information. And then you can say, well, I got this information from my teacher, and I got that information from this source, and I got this information from that book. And it's very different. It's like, again, I can only relate to it as I have related to it. It's like when you get information, you're getting like a body without blood. The blood of the thing tells you, which can be kind of transmitted, tells you how it can flow through you in terms of perception, spirit, and emotion. The rest is kind of intellectual. That's what I always told Roshi, by the way, and the essay we've all read has something to do with that too, which I'd like to talk about later. I always told Genpo Roshi that in the last few years when I was a student, I never even really had to listen to what he said, because it didn't really matter that much to me, because what I was learning more was a body-to-body teaching. I was kind of like, when he would teach, I would put myself in some way in his body, some kind of osmosis, where I would learn his attitudes, his deep attitudes, like his things, like, I mean, even funny things, for example. Something I don't do because I would kill myself, in fact I'm not allowed to do, is ride a motorcycle. This happened after an accident, actually not on a motorcycle, but on a big scooter, in which I crashed myself and son Alex, who was on the back. And Karen asked me, she was very nice about it. She just said, your balance really isn't that good. It's not a thing you should be doing. It's true, my balance isn't good. But, for example, Genpo rides a Harley. And it's his great passion. And he is that way. Now, I don't do what he does, but I understand that part of him. And I'm enriched by it. I've learned from it. I may not want to do exactly the same thing. Maybe I would if I could. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't. I might, in fact, if I thought I wouldn't kill myself, and if I hadn't promised. But there's a certain kind of learning that you get from a person. It's from the way they stand, it's the way they talk, and it's deeper, much deeper than intellectual understanding. And I'd like to look at that a little bit today. And I thought of that because I was just talking to Genpo, but also I was thinking about what we mean by spiritual practice, because that's also a very strange word today. And it can be, in my mind, very diluted and delusional, or not for me anyway. For me, spiritual practice is about knowing what can be known and not knowing the rest. Not knowing is a much bigger category than what can be known. Once you start knowing things, and I'm going to be flippant here, like that the world is telling you what to do, and which of your chakras is operating what, you're knowing something. And it's not a, maybe that's spirituality for some people. It's not a spirituality that I learned, that I teach, or I'm interested in. It seems to me a magical, almost childish way of wishing the universe was that it's not, as far as it is in my experience. On the other hand, knowing things like that you're only passing through here and that you're going to die is knowing. Very few people would argue with it. And so that to me forms a basis for spirituality, understanding real things like you're just a traveler here, you're just passing through. And so you don't need the magic of chakras. That is an incredibly magical idea. It's a very powerful magical idea that blows apart the whole system that we usually work on and what we make important, because we act like this is permanent, that we can invest in it, and we know what the right things are to do, and we know what we're going to gain from it. All not true. Does not stand up to evidence or examination. Also, that powerful is the not knowing. And this is the experience, speaking with Roshi, of a student, of a long-time student, is constantly being thrown off what you know and what you think is so, and it's uncomfortable, and always being thrown into the unknown.